So you're always trying to get ahead in this investing world, right? Always looking for those diamonds in the rough, those opportunities that could really take your portfolio to the next level.
Right.
And that's what we're all about here, right? Trying to help you understand those trends, those companies that have that game-changing potential.
Absolutely.
And today we're zeroing in on a company called IONQ.
IONQ. They're really a leader in this whole quantum computing space.
Yeah, it's a fascinating space. And, stock market's been kind of all over the place recently.
And volatile. Yeah, for sure.
So understanding the dynamics of a company like this, especially one that's in a field as potentially revolutionary as quantum computing, it's more crucial now than ever.
I think that's a great point, especially when you look at the amount of news and data that's come out, even just in the past few weeks.
Right.
We're looking at stock price movements, their earnings reports, and then you've got the overall trends in the quantum computing industry as a whole. And then, of course, all the different opinions out there about whether it's a good investment or not.
And we've got quite a bit of that information.
We do up to March 15th, 2025.
Yeah, so we really want to use this time to break it all down give you the insights you need to make informed decisions.
Exactly.
So really our goal today is to unpack all of those big factors that are influencing IONQ's recent performance.
Yeah, and help you figure out what all of this means for you if you're thinking about, maybe adding it to your portfolio.
Right, and I think a good place to start would be with the recent stock performance.
Yeah.
Because it's been pretty volatile.
Yeah, for sure. IRNQ's stock has seen, a pretty significant drop.
Yeah, over 60%.
Yeah, from its all-time high.
In just the past 8 weeks.
Which is a pretty steep decline.
It is, but then more recently we've seen this kind of almost like a rebound, hasn't it?
It has.
On March 13th, the stock jumped up 10%.
And that was with a trading volume of about $203 million.
That's a huge amount of activity.
It is what caused that spike.
Well, it seems to be tied to some pretty interesting news. There was a report that Rakuten Securities bought a sizable chunk of shares.
Yeah, they purchased 90,000 shares for a total value of about $3.7 million.
And this was during the last quarter of 2024.
Right.
And that's not just, any ordinary institutional investor.
No. Rakuten's known for their strategic investments, and particularly in these emerging tech fields.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
It's not like they're just throwing money at any new shiny object. They've probably done their homework.
Oh, yeah. You can bet they've done their due diligence.
So that move from Rakuten, it's a pretty strong indicator.
Way stronger than, some smaller fund jumping in.
Definitely. And on top of that, IONQ also just raised a pretty big amount of capital, didn't they?
Yeah, that's right. On March 11th, they announced that they had raised $360 million in net proceeds.
Wow.
Through an ATM equity offering.
And that was for 16 million shares.
Yeah, basically they're selling shares gradually into the market as opposed to all at once.
It's a way to kind of, bring in that cash without shaking things up too much.
Exactly, and it gives them this steady stream of funding.
Right. That's like a nice cushion.
Yeah, for sure. It really strengthens their position.
So we've got this picture now of a stock with some pretty big swings, a big drop, but then a nice recovery fueled by this news of institutional investment, and then a major cash infusion.
Sounds like a roller coaster.
It kind of is, but let's dig a little deeper now into their actual financial performance.
Yeah.
How are they doing numbers-wise?
So in terms of revenue, IONQ has been exceeding expectations, which is always a good sign.
Yeah, you always like to see that.
And projections right now are pointing to an annual revenue growth rate of 111%.
Through 2027.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive growth.
That's huge. But, of course, a big question for a lot of investors is profitability. When are they going to actually start making money?
Right, and that's where things get a little interesting. Analysts are saying that IONQ probably won't be profitable until 2027.
So we've got this mix of, really strong growth potential, but no profits for now.
And that's why the stock is seen as speculative, and it's why we see that volatility.
It's a bit like those biotech companies,
Yeah, spending years and years developing a drug before it ever hits the market.
Exactly. You pour in all this money up front, and those profits, they're way off in the future.
They are a future prospect, not a current reality.
So that's a really helpful way to think about the risk-reward scenario here.
Yeah, I think so.
And speaking of risk and reward, let's zoom out a bit and look at the bigger picture. The whole quantum computing industry where IONQ is playing.
Yeah, quantum computing, it's still in its very early stages, right?
Like a Wild West.
It's a field with massive potential.
Oh, yeah.
But when it comes to real-world applications for businesses and everyday people, we're still a ways off.
Right. But even though it's early days, IONQ is making some pretty strategic moves.
They're really focusing on building up their tech advantages.
And they're not messing around.
Like on March 12th, their subsidiary ID Quantique, they went and added almost 250 patents to their portfolio,
Wow.
mostly focused on quantum networking, which brings their total to almost 400.
That's a huge statement.
It is, and I think it shows they're playing the long game.
Yeah, they're thinking about how all these quantum computers are going to connect and communicate in the future.
It's not just about the hardware, it's about the whole infrastructure.
And that could give them a real edge.
For sure, it could. And, their new CEO, Niccolo De Masi, he's been really emphasizing their trapped ion technology.
What's so special about that?
Well, he's saying it has the potential to be the most precise and scalable approach to quantum computing.
So he's pretty confident in their tech.
He is. There's even been some buzz comparing IONQ to like the ChatGPT moment for AI.
So they're thinking big.
They are.
And we are seeing more and more interest in the potential for quantum computing to completely revolutionize all kinds of industries.
Oh, absolutely. Healthcare, drug discovery, cybersecurity.
It's mind-blowing, the possibilities.
They are, but like we said before, that widespread adoption, it's still a few years out.
Yeah, we're not all going to have quantum computers on our desks tomorrow.
Not quite yet.
So how does IONQ stack up against some of its competitors in this space?
You've got companies like Rakuten Computing and D-Wave Quantum.
Right, those are some of the big names.
And they've all seen their fair share of ups and downs in their market value.
That's for sure.
But IONQ's growing patent portfolio and all that institutional interest, particularly from players like Rakuten, that could set them apart.
Those are strong signals, but we also have to remember the bigger picture. Right? The whole tech market is going through some stuff.
Absolutely. Like, look what happened to one of those big AI companies recently.
Right. Their market cap took a hit because of concerns about future AI demand.
Even though everyone's excited about AI, those broader economic worries, they can still impact even the most promising technologies.
So it's a good reminder that, even with all the hype around quantum computing, things can change quickly.
No investment is a sure thing.
All right, so we're seeing this really interesting dynamic here with IONQ, where you've got company-specific news developments in the quantum computing field, and then the overall market sentiment, all playing a role in how their stock performs.
It's a complex picture.
It is. So let's try to break down some of the emerging patterns we're seeing in their stock activity.
One thing that really stands out is the connection between news announcements and those big price swings.
You see a news story and then, bam, our stock jumps up or down.
Exactly. Things like the Rakuten investment, the patent news, the capital raises, those are all catalysts for some pretty significant moves.
So it seems like the momentum behind IONQ is really driven by events.
It's event-driven for sure.
Which makes sense, especially for a company in a field that's evolving so quickly.
Every little piece of news can have a ripple effect.
And we're also seeing more and more interest from those big institutional investors.
You are, in the last quarter, 257 institutional investors increased their holdings in IONQ.
Wow, versus how many who reduced?
Only 121 reduced, so that's a net increase.
So more are getting on board than jumping ship.
That's how it looks.
And even after that big price drop we talked about, we keep seeing these strong rebounds.
Yeah, like that recent 10% jump after a 44% decline in the previous month.
So it's like people are buying the dip.
They are, and it seems like they're betting on the company's underlying strengths.
Like their 63% gross profit margin.
And that projected 102% compound annual growth rate.
Yeah, it's like they're saying, okay, the price is down, but we still believe in their long-term potential.
They're looking past the short-term volatility.
Right, and there's this other interesting angle to consider.
What's that?
It seems like quantum computing stocks like IONQ, they're starting to tell their own story.
Their own narrative.
Yeah, one that's kind of separate from all the concerns around, say, AI stocks, which are more tied to the immediate economic outlook.
It's like quantum computing is carving out its own path.
Yeah, it's becoming its own thing.
Which is pretty fascinating to see.
It is so, take all of this into account. What are some of the potential investment opportunities that people should be thinking about?
Well, in the short term, you've got that volatility, which can create some quick wins for traders who can stomach the risk.
Because you can see a quick spike on some news and then sell right.
Exactly. But you also have to be prepared for the possibility of a big loss.
High risk, high reward.
Exactly.
And what about for those who are looking at the longer term?
For those with a higher risk tolerance, IONQ could be a good speculative play for long-term growth.
Because there's always that possibility that it could follow a similar trajectory to those early AI companies.
Right, and some analysts are even suggesting some pretty ambitious price targets.
Which means a lot of upside potential.
But of course, that all hinges on IONQ actually delivering on their plans.
and on the whole field of quantum computing really taking off.
Right. It's all about execution and adoption.
And then there's also that recent pullback in price.
Mm-hmm.
Some people might see that as a chance to get in.
Yeah. Some might see it as a buying opportunity, kind of like how some of those other companies were overlooked early on, but then they exploded.
And with that extra $360 million, IONQ has a bit more breathing room now.
Yeah, they can ride out some of the bumps in the road.
But of course, we can't forget about the risks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the big ones is their valuation. It's pretty high compared to their current revenue.
And that's something that some analysts have been pointing out.
They're saying it's not sustainable.
And then there's the whole profitability thing. No profits yet.
Mm-hmm.
And they're relying on the success of quantum computing as a whole.
Those are some big ifs.
They are, and we can't ignore the bigger economic picture either.
Right. There's always the possibility of a recession or trade wars, things like that.
Which could really hurt speculative growth stocks like IONQ.
For sure, those macroeconomic headwinds, they can have a big impact.
And there was also that short report from Kerrisdale Capital.
Oh, yeah, they were questioning IONQ's growth potential.
And suggesting that their focus on quantum networking might be a sign that they're struggling with their core quantum computing stuff.
Right, but it's interesting because the markets seem to kind of ignore that report and focus on the positive news.
It's like they're choosing to be optimistic.
Maybe, but then again, IONQ did just land a pretty big contract.
Yeah, that $94.5 million deal to build a quantum networking system for the U.S. Air Force Research Lab.
That's a pretty significant win.
So it's a mixed bag.
It is.
So to sum it all up, we've got a company with a stock price that's been on a bit of a roller coaster,
Up, down, all around.
driven by news and market sentiment, operating in a field that's full of potential, but also a lot of unknowns.
And they've got this combination of strong growth potential fueled by their technology and strategic moves, but also these very real risks,
So IONQ, it's really a story of high reward, high risk.
where their success is tied to their ability to execute their plans and the overall adoption of quantum computing.
Right, it's a bet on the future.
In a lot of ways, it is.
And so for you listening to this, the question to ask yourself is, what are those milestones, those indicators that you should be watching to figure out if this investment is going to be a winner in the long run?
What are the signs that quantum computing is really going to live up to the hype?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is, and it's something to keep in mind as you follow IONQ in this whole quantum computing space.
Definitely. Well, we hope you found this deep dive into IONQ informative. And if you did, please consider subscribing to the Investing Talk podcast and leaving us a like and a comment.
We love hearing from you.
We do. It helps us make the show better.
And who knows, maybe you'll even give us some ideas for our next deep dive.
That's right. So until next time, happy investing.
Happy investing.